Howdy folks, welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles. Yep, that's a TOG 2. It's time to do the TOG 2 review. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. And I've been waiting until I had some, how can I put this, not necessarily good games in the TOG 2, but games worthy of the TOG status is probably the safest way to put it. I don't think this is a very good tank, but I love it anyway. It's so much fun. Everybody cheers up when they see a TOG in the team list, regardless of whether it's on your team or the enemy team. The jokes start flying around. It's one of those tanks that just puts a smile on everybody's face. It certainly does for me. I've named mine HMS Pointless. It's traditional amongst TOG drivers to name your tank after a battleship or a warship of some description. So there she is, HMS Pointless. And she is pretty much pointless. The TOG, the name actually stands for the Old Gang, which is what the design committee who designed this monstrosity called themselves. There was a TOG 1, this is the TOG 2, and it was originally not intended to have a turret. They were going to put the main gun in the hull, and they was going to have side sponsors mounted here, where you can see these side doors. They were going to have sponsons mounted, just like the First World War tanks, with extra gun sponsons on the side as well. Well, that idea was scrapped, and they put an A30 Challenger cruiser tank turret on the top with a 17-pounder gun, which was probably the only good idea about this tank. The problem was that the guys who designed it had also designed the first British tanks in the First World War, and they were years ahead of their competition in the First World War, but their thinking was still mired in the whole concept of operations in First World War trench warfare. Just look at this thing. It was designed for breaching trench lines. Very long, very low body. Speed wasn't important because it was designed for battling its way across no man's land and then just driving over trench lines. Well, that was never going to happen in the Second World War. If you look at the vehicle details, there you go. Developed for trench warfare. So it's already obsolete. By 1943, when it was completed, seriously, 1943, they were still designing tanks like this? Yeah, it was obsolete. Never entered service. Now, it is actually a fun tank to drive, in a way that, well, it's not even really like the Churchill. The Churchill's really slow. Well, certainly the Russian Churchill is really, really slow. And it's got a god-awful gun, but it's very, very heavily armoured. Well, this is kind of almost the opposite. It's got a very, very good gun, but it's got horrible armour. And the special thing about the TOG is, bear in mind, this is just a Tier 6 heavy tank. It's got 1,400 hit points. What else has 1,400 hit points? The IS doesn't even have 1,400. It's a Tier 7 heavy. What about the KV-1S? 810. It's got half the health of the TOG 2. IS-3, 1,500. The TOG 2 has 100 less health than the IS-3. So that's kind of awesome. And one of the reasons why I held off getting the TOG for so long was because I looked at the armour, and the armour is crap. And I looked at the speed, and the speed is diabolically slow. And I just thought, this thing is just a punching bag for the enemy team. It's just a great big XP and credit pinata. Right? It rolls forward, the enemy spot it, they all start shooting, and a couple of minutes later they've whittled its health down to nothing, and it's just a big... You know, you just shoot it and credits and XP come out. And to an extent, that is kind of true. However, this thing bites back. The DPM on this tank is phenomenal, and it's all down to that 17-pounder gun. But we'll have a look at the stats in detail, and then talk about the tank overall. So I've already mentioned the fact that it has 1,400 hit points. It's got more health than any two other Tier 6 vehicles put together. You know, it's phenomenally It's just so much health. And it's just as well because it has no armour. The armour's garbage. 76 at the front, 76 at the side, 50 at the rear. The turret is better, 114 at the front, but still 76 at the side, 53 at the rear. But it's all flat. You know, there's hardly any sloping or angling going on here whatsoever. And what sloping there is not very good. You will try to angle this thing just out of habit, but it's a complete waste of time because one, it takes so long, and two, they just go through you like butter anyway. This thing it may as well not be armoured at all. I mean, maybe some tier 4s might have problems getting through your 76mm. I mean, let's not forget 76mm is the same armour thickness as... Oh, I don't have one. Of course I don't have one. Where are we? Let's have a look in the tech tree. 76mm at the front is KV1. In fact, it's a millimetre better than a KV1. And the KV1 it's a pretty well armoured tier 5 heavy tank. So it's not terribly badly armoured if you're getting into a tier 4 or 5, majority tier 4 or 5 game. And that can happen if you're top tier in this thing. It's tier 6, you can go up against tier 4 tanks and you'll absolutely slaughter them, and they will have a hard time against you. But anything tier 5, 6 or 7, which this thing faces, will not have problems penetrating you whatsoever. But like I said, this thing bites back, and it's down to that 17-pounder gun. Now, this was a really, really good gun. Let's not forget, this is the same gun that was used to kill tigers in the Sherman Firefly, or a variation of the same gun. It's a 17-pounder gun Mark 7. It's a 76mm gun. The rate of fire is 12 rounds per minute. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Penetrates up to 171mm and does 150 average damage. The accuracy is good, 0.36. The aiming time of 2.3 seconds isn't bad. That is a decent gun. And what is generally considered to be the best / the most overpowered tank at tier 6, certainly not the TOG 2, is this thing, the KV-1S, with that 122mm gun that does 390 average damage. But a KV-1S has a rate of fire of 3.75 rounds per minute. And if you ever are driving your TOG 2 and you come across a KV-1S driver who basically trades DPM with you, trades his damage per minute with you, who sits there in front of you, and you might laugh, you might think nobody's that stupid. Oh yes, they are. If you're allowed to pump shot after shot into a KV-1S while he's reloading his gun, he'll hurt you, but you will kill him. The damage per minute, the sustained fire damage output of that gun is very, very good. TOGs that get the opportunity of just sitting there and pumping, just putting that gun to work on you, are very, very dangerous machines. Their single biggest drawback, however, is their god-awful speed. That is an 80-ton tank, and it only has a 600 horsepower engine. 14 km/h speed limit. These tanks look at Churchills and start getting speed envy. It is so incredibly slow. And kind of like driving Churchills and Matildas and other really, really slow machines, T-28 prototypes, things like that, if you pick the wrong way to go at the start of a battle, you're stuffed. You're completely stuffed, right? This thing will never see action until every other tank on the team's dead and the enemy team come to finish you off. And that's the only time you'll ever get to actually use that gun in anger.